Hey, I'm Mush and I'm here in the mill, our 9th through 12th Makerspace at Cannon School. Today we're going to talk about a start of the year tradition that takes us all the way back to our roots. 5 years ago, we opened this space with a lot of excitement and big ideas about what might be possible. And one of the first things we wanted to try was to make our own workbenches for the main classroom. So on the first day of school, we launched right into construction. In a mostly empty giant room, we designed, laid out, and assembled the work tables that we're still using today. We're about to jump into our annual tradition of refinishing them to have a fresh start and a fresh finish for a new year. We're going to use a new tool and a new to us finish from TotalBoat to see how it holds up compared to what we're used to, and I'm really excited for you to see that process, so let's get going. Check out these tables. They've been with us since day one of this space, enduring wear and tear from countless projects, complete with spills from paint, epoxy, hot glue, and all sorts of stuff. Despite that though, they're still full of a lot of memories. The students who helped open this space also helped make these tables, and it's pretty cool to have that part of them still with us here today. So rather than trashing them when they get nasty, we keep them, and every year scrape off and sand down the gunk from the previous year and give them a fresh coat of finish. Last year you can see we used black paint, and that held up to cover the old stuff, but also the new stuff. It's pretty visible when it gets on top of it. Now, normally this process takes a long time, days and days over the course of weeks to scrape, sand, and sometimes power plane all the wear and tear away. And we end up with a table that's smooth, but not perfectly level. So this year, we're gonna try and use a router sled to quickly take off that top surface level and smooth things out nicely. So a quick walkthrough of how this whole process is gonna work. We've got a high-powered plunge router attached to this platform, which is attached to these rails, which lets the whole thing slide around pretty much anywhere on this surface. We've got a large drill bit attached underneath of the router, which lets us take a relatively large amount of surface area off with each pass. And we can set the depth that we're going to use with this macro kind of control and a micro control to get the large placement and the fine tuning. And we're going to try and take a small amount off with each pass until all the paint is gone and we have one flat, smooth, level surface. After that, we'll fill in any cracks with some epoxy, sand it all down smooth, and then apply finish. Now, I say all this just to give you context for what you're about to see. This is in no way enough info or instruction for someone without training or supervision to use any of this. So please be mindful of proper tool use, and as always, you are responsible for ensuring your safety if you work on any projects like this on your own. I mentioned some of the finishes that we're going to be using. This is TotalBoat's UV curing resin, and this is their Halcyon water-based marine varnish. The epoxy we're going to use to fill in any cracks or knots or holes that are in the tabletops, and then we'll hit it with a UV light or just let it sit in the sun to cure and sand it so it's nice and smooth. The varnish we're going to use instead of the black paint that we usually use each year. It looks great for a couple of days, but then inevitably somebody spills something on it, and it doesn't look as good for the rest of the year, which is fine. I mean, these tables are only semi-precious. We refinish them every year, but I'm curious to see how this stuff, which is designed to stand up against salt water and weather and all sorts of boat-related wear and tear, will work for our purposes. The first thing we got to do though is get one of these tabletops loaded onto the router sled.
These tabletops are big, heavy pieces, so gravity is going to take care of most of the work when it comes to keeping them from moving around. But we're also going to pop some wedges under the sides and temporarily hot glue them to the sled tables so our tabletop can't move in any direction. So as you saw, these tables are pretty wonky because of how we've refinished them for the last couple of years, so this next part is a little bit of guess and check. We did a little bit of experimentation with a long level to see if we could figure out where the high points were, and when we found one, we marked it so that we could start the router there and start taking material off from the highest point down to the lower ones. When we were ready to go, we moved the router totally off the piece so that there was no chance of it getting caught on the wood as it started to spin up. And after that, it was time to get this thing moving. After we finished a pass, we moved the router bit off the piece and lowered it just a tiny bit, only about a quarter turn on the fine tuning knob so as not to stress the router by trying to take too much off on the next pass. Now this was still a lot of time invested in smoothing each of the 8 tables out, but it was far less work than trying to do it all with sanders, planers, and scrapers, and the end result came out much nicer. You can see as the router takes off a layer that the original wood grain is visible underneath. The more we got this cleaned up, the more excited we were to put a clear finish on to let that wood grain be seen again. We made sure to follow all of our shop safety protocols while we were doing this, so we had eye and ear protection on, and any loose hair or clothing was totally tied up and out of the way. We also made sure to be mindful of the power cord and keep it well away from the router while it was powered out. Shout out to Hyspecs for the glasses we have here. We did some planing in the afternoon, and it was awesome to have UV protection on top of eye protection as we went.
So like I mentioned before, some of these boards have knots in them or cracks in between the seams where the boards go together. And probably wouldn't be a big deal to just leave them as is, but we're gonna try hitting them with a little bit of the UV curing epoxy just to fill them in. We're already putting the work in to seal these up and make them look nice and smooth, so this little bit of attention to detail I think will show up nicely. Now that we got everything leveled out, we are going to sand it, but just to make it smooth to the touch. It's gonna be way faster to do this and a little bit of sanding at the ends than it has been in the past to try and sand everything to clean it all up. We decided to paint the edges black just to give it some visual interest. We thought the contrast between the wood green and the black paint would make it pop. Look really nice, and I'm really happy with how it turned out.
All right, so we've got these tables cleaned up, so now it's time to seal them up. This TotalBoat Halcyon varnish is water-based, so it's really easy for us to apply pretty cleanly, and like I said, I'm hoping that this is going to hold up against the wear and tear of another year of living in our makerspace better than the paint, the stain, or the, well, nothing that we've tried putting on in the past. This space has grown a lot over the past 5 years, and I guarantee that it will continue to do so for at least as long as I get to be involved with it. So it's really important to me that we still have these tables, and while they might look different from year to year, there's still a well-used artifact of this space that tells an important part of our origin story. The juxtaposition of something so enduring in a constantly changing and evolving space is a really neat dichotomy, and I think it's an important part of our journey to pay tribute to those roots. I definitely recommend having some sort of long-lasting touch point in your space, especially if it's something that you and your community are able to build for yourselves.
I'm able to capture this already. These tables are still only a couple of days old, but you can already see we have like hot glue and paint on them, but so far everything is coming off pretty easily. And as you have some paint, kind of get it wet, give it a little rub and buff it out, and it's coming off a lot better than it did with the black paint. So as we need an opportunity to kind of shine things up the mill, it's gonna be a lot easier to do that with this instead of with what we've had in the past. So I'm already really happy and really excited with this. Sweet. So there you have it. Another school year, another go around for these tables. I think this new process was just so much better, and I'm excited to employ that for future years as we still have a lot of life still left in these things. Thanks so much for checking this video out. If there are any things in our shop or that we do in our classes that you want to learn more about, let us know in the comments. You can also like, subscribe, and do the bell thing if you want to know the next time we share a video like this. And in the meantime, we'll be putting stuff on our Instagram, so go check out links in the description to keep up with that. But until then, be well, do good, and go make something better. Thanks.